Good evening everyone, welcome back to my channel, True Crime with Jess Rose. Thank you for joining me again. And tonight I'd like to look at a different show to the ones I've been doing, and it's Crimes That Shook Britain. And this case, it's quite an upsetting one. You know, it's a young girl. You know, we've done the Soham murders and Ellie Mae Butler, and you know, they're really, really hard stories to tell, and this one does go back to the 90s, but I also feel they shouldn't be forgotten. And this is the case of Victoria Climbie. Awful story. So Victoria Climbie, she was born on the 2nd of November 91, and she was born in the Ivory Coast, and youngest of four, described as being a really happy girl, entertainer of the family, always dancing, like I say, always happy, you know, and yeah, just loving life. And Victoria has got a great aunt who is the matriarch of their family. It's her dad's auntie, and her name is Mary Therese Quayo, and she's 42. Just before Victoria's 7th birthday, Marie comes over, and she kind of wants to recruit Victoria to, it's an opportunity, basically. Marie lives in France, and she offers to take Victoria, you know, to get her a better education. And it's been described by one of the people on the show that it's the equivalent of someone coming to me or you and offering, you know, get our kids educated at Eton or Harrow. You know, it's such an amazing opportunity. And so you know, the parents did deliberate. You know, they weren't too sure, but they you know, it's testament to them really that they were willing to let her go, you know, for her benefit, you know, and they agreed to this. So in October of 98, Marie comes back to collect Victoria, but as it happens, Victoria wasn't Marie's first choice. It was a little girl called Anna, and on the passport it says Anna Quayo, but Anna's parents, we don't hear a lot about them on the show, but Anna's parents said no, they weren't letting her go. So when Marie recruited, in a sense, Victoria, she didn't want to pay, you know, a fee for changing her name or anything. So basically she tells Victoria, you're Anna from now on. You're my daughter. You're Anna. Gets her some extensions, because she doesn't even look like the other little girl. Gets her some extensions and, you know, gets her through customs, and Victoria finds herself in Paris, you know, and expecting this amazing life with her great aunt. And turns out Marie wasn't wealthy. She wasn't well off. She lived in a council flat in France. You know, she lived on benefits, and yeah, I don't know if it was for the money. I don't know why she brought Victoria over. I don't know. And basically she enrolls Victoria in a French school, you know, but Victoria's not going. Well, she's going 50% of the time, because the abuse of Victoria started very quickly. And the French authorities are obviously noticing the amount of time she's missing. I'm assuming when she was going into school, there were marks on her. You know, Marie starts to realise she's being watched, and she just ups with Victoria, leaves, and comes to London, England, in April of 99. So, you know, to escape being noticed what she's doing to this child, and also being found out of the fraud she's committed. You know, the child on the passport is not the child she's got with her. So she comes to London, and there's a lady on the show called Esther Acker, and she's a distant relative of Marie, and she says that out of the blue she gets a knock on the door. Obviously she lives in London. She gets this knock on the door, and it's Marie, and she's got Victoria with her, and I think she tells her that her name's not really Anna. You know, she does tell her, and she knows she's got a wig on. So Esther Acker, you know, tells Victoria to take the wig off. She takes it off, and she said there was like loads of little blisters on her head, but burns. And when she asked Marie about it, she just says, oh, you know, she stands under the hot tap too long. You know, but Victoria puts the wig back on. And there's one thing about this little girl. Any of the witnesses that come forward on the show, there's one thing they all say, is the smile this little girl had. And I will pop a link after the video in the bottom. And she was always smiling. She was always happy. So even though, you know, she's got these blisters on her head, when she puts the wig back on, she's still smiling. And Victoria played on Esther's mind, you know, and when she bumped into the pair, Marie and Victoria, 6 weeks later, she couldn't believe Victoria's appearance. She'd lost weight. There was a big scar on her face, which Marie very quickly talked away of being, she fell on the escalator, you know, just very quick with excuses about the injuries on this child. And, you know, Esther didn't settle with her, so she visits them. Now they're living in a hostel, you know, so this well-to-do woman, you know, she's living in a hostel. And when Esther goes to visit them, she said the hostel was, you know, it was dirty, it was smoky, it wasn't where you should have a child. And she takes it upon herself to phone social services, not once, but twice, gives them the address, explains what's going on, you know, about this poor child. And she's reassured Jess will look into it, you know, someone will go around. And nothing ever happened. There was never any follow-up to that at all. It just got lost in the system, which is, it's just, you see the lady getting upset on the show because she tried, you know, she really tried to help her. So in the middle of June, Marie secures a job in a local hospital, and she hasn't been sending Victoria to school. She's kind of learned a lesson from France, and she doesn't send her to school, but she sends her to a local childminder while she's at work. And the childminder, her name's Priscilla Cameron, but it's her daughter that does the interview on Crimes Which Shook Britain. And her name's Avril Cameron. And there was also a son, Patrick Cameron. And it was said that if ever there was a time Victoria was in the UK where she could be a child, it was while she was with the Camerons, while Marie was at work. You know, she danced for them. Mainly the son, she took a shine to him, and she'd show her traditional dances from where she come from. And there's a beautiful photo that's been taken of her, and she's got her hair in little bunches, you know. Oh, such a pretty, and the smile, I can't emphasise that enough. She's just beamed from ear to ear. Such a lovely little girl. But what they noticed is when Marie would knock on the door to be, you know, to pick Victoria up of an evening, Victoria just shut down. She'd shut down, and she'd kind of cling to one of them. And, you know, they'd started noticing that she had like cuts all over her fingers. And when they asked Marie about it, she said, oh, she cuts herself with razor blades. Again, what? You know, she's 7. What? She cuts herself with razor? So trying to explain this away, and they noticed that whenever she was coming in, she was just shouting at her. Marie was just shouting at Victoria. From the second she seen her, they couldn't understand what it was because she was saying it to her in French, but they knew it wasn't a good conversation. And, you know, Victoria was just head down, completely, you know, a complete contrast to how she'd been with them. Just very, very, very sad. Well, in July 99, Victoria and Marie move in with a gentleman called Carl Manning. Now, Marie had met Carl Manning on the bus. He was a bus driver. You know, he was a bit of a loner. You know, didn't have many friends. Had his own flat in Tottenham. He was 26. And from what's been said, Marie was very manipulative. And obviously being older, 42, you know, she did manipulate her way into his life. And before you know it, Marie and Victoria are moving in with Carl into his 1-bedroom flat bedsit. And it was very clear from the very beginning, Carl had a serious problem with Victoria. Serious problem. Now, she's already been abused by her aunt. We know this. And yeah, he made it clear he didn't like her. There was a hatred towards this little girl. Whether it was because he thought she was Marie's daughter or not, I don't know. It was never explained what that was based on. But Marie goes on a kind of a drastic course of action, to pacify this bloke, and she packs up Victoria's bags, brings her into the Camerons, the babysitters, childminder, sorry, and basically says, you've got to keep her. Just like throwing her away. Now she's met somebody and she finds somewhere to live, so she doesn't need her anymore. And Priscilla, the mum, says, look, we'll keep her for the night. It was late, but you've got to find somewhere for this girl to live. This is your daughter, So when she walked in, Avril was there and she had a hat on, Victoria did. And the mum was like, you're inside, take your hat off. And when she takes her hat off, Avril on the show gets visibly upset because she said the injuries to this poor girl. And you see her get upset because she said, because even with it and the shock obviously on her and her mum's face at seeing her, she was smiling. She was still smiling through it. And your heart just goes out to her. So Avril, she doesn't know what to do, but she knows she's got to do something. So the next day she takes Victoria to the Central Middlesex Hospital. Explains, look, this isn't my child, but I'm concerned. She voices her concern. So a doctor eventually comes to see them and spends 2 hours examining Victoria from top to bottom. And she says, without a doubt, this child, these are not accidental, sorry. She's been abused. She says, do you know what these marks are? And Victoria had like these odd-shaped marks on her legs, and they were cigarette burns. There was just a mark and scar after scar after scar on this poor child. So at that moment, a police protection was put in place. A report to social services was put in place. All these safeguards for Victoria, and Avril said she was so relieved that she'd done something to help this child. But the next day, a senior consultant comes out and overrides that decision and says, no, it's scabies. And Avril was like, scabies is like a rash. This girl's got scarring and cuts, and she had a gash above her head, and he passed it off as scabies. And because he overrid the decision, the police protection was stopped. The social services report was still in place, but she wasn't under protection anymore, so they let her go home with Marie when she came to collect her. They sent her back to those monsters. But a week later, Marie brings her back, but this time to the North Middlesex Hospital. So the last one was the Central. This is the North Middlesex Hospital. And the graphic burns on Victoria, like I say, I'll put a link in, and there'll be a picture there, and your heart just sinks when you see this picture. And again, she's smiling in the photo, but these burns they're horrific. And the excuse Marie gives, she's been holding her head under the hot tap because of the scabies. She's got an excuse now. This consultant's given her free rein now to, it's just, and, one of the people on the show, they say what should have been brought together at that time was a child protection conference where all the people who'd been in touch with Victoria up until then should have got together and, all came forward with what they'd heard to protect this child. And it didn't happen again. And she was sent home with them again. Even when you see the graphic scarring of Victoria, you'll see why I'm so gobsmacked that she was allowed to leave with these monsters again to go back to their home. I mean, what must she have thought? She was 7 years old. So Haringey Social Services were put in charge of, you know, overseeing Victoria and what was happening. And the young lady who was dealing with it was a lady by the name of Lisa Arthur-Worrey. Now, this girl got a lot of stick, a lot of stick after the fact. And, you know, it's been said that she was very young, she was overworked, she'd only been qualified in the job 18 months, which, you know, is very new for a social worker. She was supposed to be constantly supervised by her superiors, which she wasn't. You know, and when she goes to visit them at the bedsit, you know, she, in her mind, because it's clean, Marie and Carl are very well presented, Victoria looks well presented. For some of the cases that she's seen, you know, up to then, these didn't look that bad to her. And they talked everything away. And she does admit that she never spoke to Victoria. So she wouldn't have had any idea how desperate things had become for her. But she was quite happy and left. And what was happening now to Victoria was she'd become incontinent from the beating she'd been getting. And she used to sleep on the settee. Well, she wet that quite badly, so they threw the settee out. So now she's got nowhere to sleep. So this problem, to solve that problem, Carl decides that she can sleep in the bathroom. Now it's winter. It's winter of 99 now. And she's sleeping in this, you do see a picture of it, this dingy bathroom, bound up in black bags, you know, hands tied. You know, the weaker this child was getting, the worse her abuse was becoming. You just can't imagine. You can't imagine how she felt being locked in that dark bathroom, tied up all night as a child, as a young child. Well, Lisa Arthur-Worrey does visit again in October of 99, and she comes to tell Marie that her application for council house hasn't been successful. And she says the only way we would look at reviewing that is if Victoria was in danger. So a couple of days later, Marie phones up Lisa at the, you know, the social services offices and says that Carl has been abusing Victoria. So Lisa obviously panics, tells her to come in, tells her to bring Victoria in. Oh, she does that, but she brings Carl with her. The most bizarre behaviour. The man who she's accusing of abusing her daughter, she brings with her. You know, and Lisa Arthur-Worrey and her superior was there. And they still kind of went along with this. They thought it was odd. But they, you know, basically told Marie, if you continue with this line, you know, he's going to be arrested. Victoria's going to have to go through numerous tests, you know, to prove what you're saying. You know, and it was only a couple of days later they let Victoria go back home with them. And eventually Marie drops the charges when she realises it's not going to get her a council house. I mean, the moral character of this woman, and they still let this child go home with her. Well, apparently that was one of the last chances that there could have been to save her. Because after a couple more calls, a couple more letters, you know, a spot visit to the house not long after where no one answered the door, Lisa was told to close the case and call it NFA, no further action. And that's what she did. And that was the last chance that there appears to have been to save Victoria's life from these monsters. I don't know what to call them. I don't know what to call these two people. I genuinely don't. But basically, she wasn't seen by anyone again for 4 months, except for very, very odd occasions where Marie would bring her to church. Obviously, where they're getting weaker and weaker. You know, by now, they're hardly even feeding her, or they're throwing it in on a plastic bowl where, because she's tied up, you know, she's having to shove her face into a plastic plate to try and eat. You know, she must have been in just the most horrific state. So on the 24th of February 2000, Marie takes Victoria to church again. You know, she blames evil spirits for her incontinence and her injuries and stuff when she's taking her to the church. But this time, the person who's seen her said, no, this child's got to go to the hospital. Enough. She's got to go. So they take Victoria eventually to the North Middlesex Hospital, where when she gets there, her core temperature is so low, they can't find a thermometer to read it. She's got so many injuries on her, they don't even know where to start. So they transfer her to St Mary's Children's Hospital. They try desperately to save her, but at 8 years and 3 months, she died. She died, and when they, you know, the pathologist and, you know, she was looked into what had happened, there was 128 separate injury sites on this child. There was literally none of her that had been spared. You know, that's what they said. There was nothing on this child that had been spared. So Marie and Carla are automatically arrested. You know, Marie first at the actual hospital, and then the next day Carl's arrested. She's very indignant. You've got no right to do this. She was possessed by evil spirits. I haven't done anything. How dare you? Know. He was very different. He kind of straight away owned up to his part in Victoria's. Owns up to his part in the beating of her, but, you know, always states that he never meant to kill her. But he goes into graphic detail and said, look, you know, she was beaten with hammers. She was beaten with bicycle chains. You know, he actually said something that made the policeman nearly physically sick. Like, you could hit Victoria time and time again, and she could always take it. It's a grown 26-year-old man saying this about a 7-year-old child. You know, and when they were doing the forensic clear-up, they find Victoria's passport, and they realised that the name on the passport and the photo in the passport is not the child that they've got at a mortuary now. So they realise, you know, it's not Marie's daughter. She's not saying anything. She won't help. So they end up having to investigate further, and eventually they get in touch with Victoria's parents in the Ivory Coast. You know, this is less than 18 months after they wake goodbye to this child. She hasn't even been in the UK a year. And they had to get on that plane coming over to the UK without knowing was this their daughter or not, and they had to identify her. Oh, you can't even imagine that journey over. You can't. And to know it was his auntie that was behind this. And like I say, when they were doing the forensics at the flat, they noticed a lot of bottles of bleach. Now, like I said, Carl was arrested after Marie, like a day later, and he'd gone around cleaning, you know, doing his own little forensic clean-up. And even with all the bottles of bleach he used, there were still so many blood sites in, you know, I say every single room. It was a small flat, but it was everywhere. You know, she'd been beaten every possible place in that flat there could be. For what? For what? You know, and they found this, and they also found the tape that had been bound in her hands. They found that in the bin. So on the 20th of November 2000, right through to the 12th of January 2001, the trial was at the Old Bailey. And, you know, there was a lot of people there. This was huge. This was the worst child abuse case of its kind in Great Britain ever. You know, at the time, it was huge. There was a lot of anger, not just at Marie and Carl, but all the agencies that had been involved in this child's life. She weren't off the radar. You know, she hadn't been snuck into the country and not seen again. She'd been seen by the police. She'd been seen by social services. She was seen by 3 hospitals. You know, she'd been there. There'd been so many chances to save her life, and it never happened. You know, so there was a lot going on at the time, but Marie in all of this still continued to say, even in front of her child, you know, Victoria's parents, sorry, it was demons. You know, it wasn't me. I had nothing to do with it. Carl Manning on the other, you know, side was, you know, he did say, he admitted to everything he did, but he still continued to claim that he never actually meant to kill her. Well, they, you know, the jury went to retire and, you know, make their decision. It took them 4 days, but they came back, both were found guilty, and the sentence was life. Now, I haven't heard that they were given a minimum sentence, so I think in this case, quite rightly so, life has meant life for these pair. But because of the public outcry in this case, there was also a public inquiry set up once the trial had finished to, you know, investigate how this went so wrong, how this went so badly wrong. And, you know, it took a year to get all the various agencies, all the witnesses, you know, and it did turn out that there was 12 separate times that this girl could have been saved. 12, you know, and everyone knows that the culprits are Marie and Carl Manning. They, you know, that shouldn't be taken off them, but I think they wanted to make sure it wouldn't happen again, or, you know, they could stop something like this happening again. You know, so a lot of measures were put in place, and, you know, it was such a shame because Lisa Arthur was called to give evidence, and, you know, she's never been the same. She never got over it, you know. A lot of it was put on her. A lot of blame was put to her. And like I say, she was young, she was overworked. She should have been watched by her superiors, and she wasn't, you know. So I think no matter what agencies failed, I think the blame should firmly always lie with Marie Therese Quayle and Carl Manning. I don't think that should ever be forgotten. You know, these other agencies, they could have helped, of course they could have, you know, and things did go wrong, but they are 100% to blame. Carl and Marie, I don't think that should be forgotten, I really don't. You know, and it was said during the inquiry that her parents were just so dignified because they were witnesses in the main trial. They didn't get to hear a lot of what happened to Victoria, but in the inquiry, they sat every single day and, of course, heard about each and every injury, 128 of them. You know, seeing the graphic photos of Victoria, you know, still smiling, you know, and everyone in that room, you know, said they commanded a respect because they had just this quiet dignity about them. And, you know, I think that's amazing to be able to do something like that. And on the show, you do see that in the Ivory Coast, they have built a school in Victoria's name, you know, since then. And, you know, she'll always be remembered. And, you know, and that's why I wanted to do this story, because it does go back a long time. But I think it's such a sad case that something like that shouldn't be forgotten, you know, because it was so bad, and it, you know, the country was so shocked at the time. I just think she shouldn't be forgotten, especially that amazing smile she had. Please have a look, because I was such a beautiful little girl, and yeah, she shouldn't be forgotten. And that was my talk on the Victoria Climbie story, and I just want to thank you all again for joining me. And if you've got any comments, pop them in the box, or, you know, maybe subscribe if you wanted to. And yeah, just thank you so much for joining me again, and I'll see you soon.